When the Heavenly King Intervenes, a lesson on greed and stinginess. Dear ladies and gentlemen, today we will explore a profound moral story titled When the Heavenly King Intervened. This is an educational folktale about greed, stinginess, and how these vices can be transformed. The story revolves around the main character, Mr. Lo Chi, a famous stingy person. Through humorous and awkward situations, we will see the skillful intervention of the King of Heaven, Indra, to help Lo Chi realize and correct his bad habits. We invite you to listen and reflect on the valuable lessons this story brings. We wish you an enjoyable and rewarding time. When the Heavenly King Intervenes, a lesson on greed and stinginess. Once upon a time, in an ancient city called Savatthi, there lived a man famous for his greed and stinginess. His name was Lo Chi. Lo Chi inherited a huge fortune from his parents, but instead of spending it lavishly, he became famous for the saying, "Frying the pot to open it." By saving every penny and living a life of extreme frugality, Lo Chi became a millionaire that few could compare to. One day, the city of Savatthi suddenly became bustling with a grand public festival. The sound of fireworks and drums and trumpets echoed everywhere, along with the sight of young men and women, horses and carriages pouring into the city to attend the festival. That bustling atmosphere penetrated Lo Chi's soul, making him feel a rare joy. In a moment of impulsiveness, he decided to spend too much once in his life. With that thought, Lo Chi hurriedly opened the cupboard and took out some coins, something he had never done before. But the habit of saving was still ingrained in his mind. Instead of shopping like everyone else, he went to the kitchen, took a handful of salt, a bottle, carefully wrapped it, and brought it with him. As he entered the city, Lo Chi was overwhelmed by the brilliant beauty of the streets during the festival. He walked around, looked around, and felt the festive atmosphere. But then hunger began to growl, and his stomach, accustomed to simple meals, began to demand more. In a rare moment of weakness, Lo Chi stopped at a roadside stall, bought a few more cakes and some wine, but his ingrained habit prevented him from enjoying his meal in the crowd. He quietly left the bustling area and found a secluded place outside the city. Under the shade of an ancient tree, Lo Chi was about to enjoy his luxurious meal when he suddenly heard a crow cawing from above. Panicked, afraid of losing his precious meal, he quickly ran further, all the way to a deserted field. There, in complete solitude, Lo Chi dared to enjoy his little party. A few sips of wine had made his mood unusually cheerful. For the first time in his life, he felt truly free and happy. In his drunken state, he stood up, danced, and sang loudly. Today, even the Heavenly King Indra is not as happy as I am, let alone the four heavenly kings. The boastful words accidentally reached the ears of Indra, the king of the gods who was passing by with his sages. Instead of getting angry, Indra came up with a mischievous idea to help Lo Chi realize his mistake. He decided to create another version of Lo Chi, a generous and benevolent Lo Chi. The fake Lo Chi quickly returned to the rich man's house and gathered his family together. In a sincere tone, he confessed that he had been haunted by the ghost of stinginess for a long time, preventing him from living a meaningful life. He declared that he had been freed from that curse and from now on would live a new life, a life of sharing and love. Before anyone could suspect anything, the fake Lo Chi immediately took action. He opened the door of the warehouse and took out the glittering gold coins that the real Lo Chi had never dared to touch. He sent people to shop and prepare an unprecedentedly lavish feast. Music, fireworks, and the most delicious food were displayed. Not only the family, but also the neighbors and servants were all invited to the party. In that festive atmosphere, the fake Lo Chi gave precious gifts to his old mother, wife, children, and everyone. He held his mother and wife's hands and walked around the treasury, which no one had been allowed to enter before. The laughter, music, the smell of incense mixed with the smell of firecrackers, creating an unprecedented festive atmosphere in the rich man's usually quiet house. It was truly a magical day, a day that everyone would remember forever. Lo Chi sobered up and returned home. Seeing a large crowd surrounding his house and hearing the loud sounds of music, drums, and trumpets, he was surprised and frightened. He tried his best to push his way through the gate, calling out to his family, but no one answered. Lo Chi pretended to know that the real Lo Chi had returned, and told someone to open the gate. The rich man ran straight into the house. At that moment, everyone shouted, "The stingy devil is here. Be ready to fight him off." The rich man Lochi saw a man who looked exactly like him, dressed elegantly and looking dignified, eating and drinking with his mother, wife, children, daughter, daughter-in-law, and son-in-law in a natural manner. He approached and asked, "Who are you? How can you come into my house and act so extravagantly?" The King of Heaven smiled and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Lochi, the owner of this house. This lady is my mother, that lady is my wife. Those are my children, my daughters-in-law and sons-in-law." Everyone in the family objected. The mother said, "You stingy ghost, you really are like my son, but I recognize the filial son and abandon the rebellious son." She called her daughter-in-law and said, "That stingy ghost claims to be your husband. Why don't you go near him?" The daughter-in-law blushed and scolded the rich man. "You nonsense. Get out of this house. Who would love you, you stingy thing?" The King of Heaven said, "You all acknowledge me as Lochi, the owner of this house, so why do you let this stingy ghost stay here?" Immediately, one grabbed a stick, another waved a whip and chased the rich man away. When he got out, he pulled his hair, stomped his feet on the ground, called out to heaven, and cried like a madman. An old man saw this and felt sorry for him, so he lent him money to buy gifts and went to the king to ask for his innocence. When he reached the dragon throne, the rich man Lochi had just bowed his head and presented 2 pieces of silk when suddenly Datich used his magic to transform the 2 pieces of silk into 2 bundles of dry grass. Lochi was so scared of the king that his face turned pale and he trembled, unable to speak a word. The king felt pity for him and asked the people who followed Lochi to tell him clearly what was going on. Lochi's friend reported, "Your Majesty, yesterday, when Lochi went to attend a ceremony in the city, a man who looked exactly like him, calling himself Lochi, entered his house, acted freely, and spent all his wealth. When Lochi returned, his family called him a stingy ghost and chased him away. Lochi was so indignant that he came to ask the holy emperor to judge him. The king heard the report and then ordered someone to arrest someone like Lochi and bring him to court. The fake Lochi, who was actually Dathich, came before the dragon throne. The king looked at the fairy's report. The 2 of them were like a mold. He did not know how to distinguish between the real and the fake. The king thought for a moment and then said to the defendant, "Lochi has always been stingy and did not dare to spend money. But you have a generous nature, knowing how to give charity to everyone. I have seen the difference in character like that, so I can tell the truth from the lies. You just have to confess right away." Indra replied, "Your Majesty's words are reasonable, but recently I have absorbed the teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni, abandoned evil, and followed the right path, so I have developed the mind to give alms, completely ending my old stingy and mean habits." The king asked his ministers if they had any ideas to help him clear his name. Mr. Tukkau said, "Your Majesty, please ask about the secrets in the house and in the body to know the truth." The king took the 2 men into a private room and forced them to declare their property and confidential matters. The 2 documents declaring their property and secrets were exactly the same. The king was surprised. He ordered Lochi's mother to be summoned. The king asked, "Of these 2, who is your real son?" Indra whispered in her ear, "Please don't let me be haunted by the ghost of stinginess anymore." The old woman pointed at Indra. "This person is filial to me. The other person is very ungrateful. He is definitely not my son. I accept him based on his good or bad character, not his appearance or reputation." The king asked again, "Is there any trace of your son? Is he in a secret place or not?" The old woman said, "Under my son's left armpit there is a black mole the size of a soybean." Hearing this, Indra immediately removed the mole from his armpit and waited for examination. The king ordered the 2 men to take off their shirts and lift their left arms to look. They saw that they both had the same black mole. The king and his ministers were extremely surprised and laughed out loud. The king admitted that he had no way to solve the problem. He decided to personally bring the matter to the Jetavana monastery to ask the Buddha for a judgment. Arriving before the Buddha altar, the king bowed to the Tathagata and said, "World-honored one, we have used all our talents to investigate, but still cannot distinguish between the two people. Who is the real Lo-Chi and who is the fake Lo-Chi? We hope that the Tathagata will use his Buddha eye to help us resolve this, lest we should be in trouble with the poor Lo-Chi. Then the king ordered the two Lo-Chi to be brought before the Buddha altar. The assembly sat quietly waiting to hear the Buddha's clear judgment. The fake Lo-Chi, with an unusually happy face, sat quietly and properly. The first defendant, the real Lo-Chi, had a haggard appearance, ragged and dirty clothes, and a smudged face, looking miserable. He cried and said, "O world-honored one, please, kind father, save me from this injustice." The defendant, Emperor Tich, saw Lo-Chi was so miserable and smiled. The Tathagata lifted his golden arm, and a brilliant, dazzling light broke through all dark and obscure things, leaving nothing hidden anywhere. The Buddha asked Indra, "What are you doing?" The fake Lo-Chi immediately disappeared, revealing his true form as Indra, his whole body shining with a radiant halo, his appearance solemn. He clasped his hands, and before the Buddha altar recited this verse. "The foolish and stingy person does not know how to give alms to anyone, takes 5 coins of bread and wine for a bottle, takes it to a secluded place and sits there eating it alone. Drunk and dancing, singing and dancing, speaking loudly and arrogantly, daring to defy heaven, wanting to change his character and life, I disguised myself because of power and means." Buddha told Indra, "All living beings have sins, so be happy for them." The rich man Lo-Chi lamented to Dach, "I have suffered for many years to accumulate enough money to fill the warehouse. Now you have destroyed it all. I am so pitiful." Indra replied, "I have never spent a single penny of yours." The rich man Lo-Chi was still skeptical. Buddha said, "Be assured and confident, go back and check, you will not lose anything." Lo-Chi believed Buddha's words. All his worries disappeared. He respectfully bowed to Buddha and hurriedly returned home. When he returned home, Lo-Chi was surprised to find all his possessions intact. He began to reflect on the valuable lesson he had just learned. From then on, he gradually changed his personality, becoming more generous and willing to share with others. The story of Lo-Chi and the intervention of the heavenly King Indra is a vivid example of how moral lessons can change a person's life. Through this experience, Lo-Chi realized that material wealth is not everything, and true joy comes from sharing with others. This lesson applies not only to Lo-Chi, but to all of us in our daily lives. Conclude. The story, When the Heavenly King Intervened, is not only a simple, entertaining story, but also contains profound lessons about morality and Buddhist philosophy. Through Lo-Chi's journey, we can draw 3 valuable lessons from Buddhist teachings. 1. Impermanence and the transience of material wealth. The first and most important lesson that the story conveys is the Buddhist concept of impermanence. Lo-Chi, with his greed and attachment to wealth, had to learn a painful lesson when he thought he had lost everything. This clearly illustrates the Buddha's teaching about the impermanence of material things and the dangers of overemphasizing wealth. In Buddhist teachings, impermanence, anicca, is one of the 3 fundamental characteristics of all things. Everything changes, nothing lasts forever, including material wealth. Lo-Chi learned that no matter how much wealth he accumulated, it could disappear in the blink of an eye. This lesson reminds us not to be too attached to temporary things, but instead to focus on cultivating lasting spiritual values. 2. Compassion and sharing. The second lesson concerns compassion and the importance of sharing. The heavenly King Indra, out of compassion, intervened to help Lo-Chi realize his mistake. This act demonstrates one of the core teachings of Buddhism, compassion for all living beings. In Buddhism, compassion, karuna, is one of the 4 immeasurables, along with loving kindness, metta, sympathetic joy, mudita, and equanimity, upekkha. Compassion is not only about feeling the pain of others, but also about wanting to help them escape from suffering. The king of the gods, Indra, demonstrated this by helping Lo-Chi realize his mistakes and change himself. The story also emphasizes the importance of sharing and giving, dana. When Lo-Chi realized that true joy comes from sharing with others, he learned the lesson of dana, one of the important practices in Buddhism. Giving not only helps others, but also helps the giver develop compassion and let go of attachment to material possessions. Number 3, karma and the ability to transform. The third lesson concerns the concept of karma and the ability to transform oneself. Lo Chi, by being stingy and mean, created bad karma for himself. However, the story shows that humans always have the ability to change and transform. In Buddhism, karma is the law of cause and effect, according to which every action has a consequence. However, the Buddha also taught that humans have the ability to change their karma through mindfulness and right action. Lo Chi, after experiencing the lesson, had the opportunity to change his karma by becoming more generous and sharing. This capacity for transformation represents another important aspect of Buddhism, the belief in the potential for enlightenment of all beings. Each person has Buddha nature, and through practice and realization, liberation from suffering can be achieved. In conclusion, the story of When the Heavenly King Intervened is not just a simple moral story, but also a profound lesson in the core teachings of Buddhism. It reminds us of the impermanence of life, the importance of compassion and sharing, and the ability to transform ourselves to become better versions of ourselves. In modern life, these lessons are still of great value. We live in a world where material things are often valued more than the spiritual, where selfishness sometimes overwhelms compassion. Lo Chi's story reminds us that true happiness does not come from accumulating wealth, but from sharing and helping others. Furthermore, the story also encourages us to believe in our ability to change. No one is perfect, and we all have flaws. However, as Lo Chi demonstrates, with awareness and determination, we can overcome bad habits and become better versions of ourselves. Finally, this story also emphasizes the important role of moral and spiritual education in society. Through stories like this, we can impart important moral values to the younger generation, helping them develop not only intellectually but also morally and spiritually. By applying these lessons to our daily lives, we can create a better society where people care and share with each other. That is the spirit of Buddhism and the goal we should all aim for in our lives. Dear ladies and gentlemen, you have just listened to a video from the Buddhist Folktales collection, which is broadcast at 7 p.m. every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday on the YouTube channel Buddhist Story, Master You. We sincerely thank you for watching. To not miss the upcoming episodes, please remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. If you find the content useful, please share this video with your family and friends. Your feedback is very valuable to us. Please leave a comment below the video so we can discuss and share together. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Namo Sakyamuni Buddha.